But then if you
Here,
want
I'll
to
go
still
check.
wait, Patty's in a hurry, so.
Patty's like, let's get a move on.
Nobody else was going.
Patty, we haven't met since like.
Forever. November,
Well, we had that one work.
we had a
session,
work session, but
But there has not been a COA yet this year. So we're in that.
okay, I'm gonna get it started, and if they come in, we'll make a note of who it is. All right, we will call the meeting to order. It is now 6:01 on June 17th. Welcome, and roll call, please.
Shannon Glazer, Clark Strickland.
Here.
Patty Tyler,
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport, Chair Lisa Manfold.
Here. Thank you. Okay, we have an agenda. I will take a motion to approve the agenda for today.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
All in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Do you have any public comment, Dylan or Wonder?
Nobody has come in yet at this time.
No one's
And no one's
online,
online?
so.
You know, I always tell people about our meetings and people are like, okay, yeah, whatever. Me too. Outside of the Idaho Springs website?
Yes.
I do. And are there any conflicts of interest of anything that we are discussing this evening?
No.
Hearing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from November 19th, 2024. Bueller? Did we get a chance to read the minutes? They're in the packet.
Yeah, right here on page 2.
Mhm.
I'm not someone who can make a motion.
No, you cannot, nor I. Wonder if you could please show Michael here at 6:02.
I surely will.
Thank you.
So noted.
I will move to approve the minutes from November 19th. 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's only the three of us, well, now four of us. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain, didn't attend the meeting.
You didn't attend, okay, fair enough. All right, we will move on to swearing in our alternate member. Did everyone get a chance to read Erica's CV? We approved her as our alternate member in the last city council meeting.
I'm sorry, I was just waiting for you.
No, go ahead.
Please. Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Okay.
I, Erica Duvick, do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of Historic Preservation Review Commission Board alternate member for the city of Idaho Springs, upon which I'm about to enter.
I, Erica Duvick, do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of Historic Preservation Review Commission Board alternate member for the city of Idaho Springs, upon which I'm about to enter.
Excellent. If you can sign that for me. Welcome.
There really isn't a break.
No, I know. It's hard.
Welcome. For a minute, I didn't realize that you had the piece of paper and I thought, oh my God, she's remembering that.
Wouldn't that be impressive?
Very impressive.
I wish.
Erica, would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the commission? Because I don't know that they have had a chance to talk to you as I did on council.
That's true. I guess I didn't. Hi, I'm Erica. I don't know. What do you want me to say? I don't enjoy talking about myself, but I do enjoy talking about old buildings.
What drew you
That's
to
a good
apply
start.
to be on this commission?
So I used to work in historic preservation for about 15 years and I no longer do. So I'm trying to still be involved in whatever way I can. And so this is the most logical way to do that.
Well, we are very, very glad to have you, and this is close too. Like, you don't have to come that far.
Yes, I like that.
So welcome, Miss Erica. All right, moving on to our general updates. Dylan.
Sure, yeah. So to start, I asked Donna here from project support in the senior center because there's some exciting things going on at the senior center that are a long time in the making. But since, we're finally seeing the fruits of all your labors, I thought it was a good time to get a brief update, though it sounds like
We have so much more to update you on.
Yeah.
Than just
quite a lot.
that we're in the process. They moved over to the west side of the wall today.
So they're done with the front? We're initially done with the front?
No. This building takes 2 coats because there's no less than 6 coats of paint on that building. And they got through the first 5 coats and they looked at it and they said, you can't see any of the mortar up there. And lo and behold, that's because somebody painted the building red the first time.
Oh my.
So now it takes a second coat on a lot of it, not necessarily all of it. There have been sections where this stuff they put on has eaten through all 3 to 6 layers of paint. We thought at first there was only 4 at the maximum. There seems to be about 6 different colors. And so they're working on that. One guy showed up today and he's working on the west wall as far up as he can reach, because they only want to use the scaffolding for a short period of time, so they're getting the lower part done first. They'll wash all that off. If you come and look at it up the very top of the front of the building, about the first third, it's all the paint off. It is beautiful brick. Ryan, who did your building here, said that it's in amazingly good shape for being 138, 39 years
I was
old.
worried too that it was like the Idaho Springs brick,
It is the Idaho Springs.
Now they have the
brick.
Denver brick that comes up here and doesn't last very well.
Oh, no, this is sun-dried, soft brick.
Mhm.
And he said it is truly amazing what good shape those bricks are in. There's also, if you want to look at the 2 layers of decorative brick up there,
Mhm.
I thought that the second layer down was one brick put put at an angle, and then the next one and that one and that. It's not. They're 3 bricks high.
Oh, wow.
And there's mortar in between them, and it's spectacularly beautiful. And Ryan said they were artists. The bricklayers, they're Welsh, and it's called Welsh brickwork. And it was just, it's amazing when they get the new mortar in there, it'll just be stunning up there. Of course, the whole building will be stunning because the firehouse is. As little as that building is, it's a beautiful little building and ours will follow suit. He's trying to be as considerate as he can be for the thrift shop. And trying not to close us for even a day. They've had to cordon off the front entrance for a little while, but they always open up.
The side entrance.
Yeah, and you just have to tell the people how to get there, which is interesting. So the next thing is, once we get the brick cleaned, then they will start sawing and taking out the mortar and redo the whole building. I at first thought that they were just going to tuck point, but they're not. It's all gonna be done. And the new news is we didn't get the grant for the veranda.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. I had to sit down Thursday and read an email 3 times before I could believe it. But when one door closes, a humongously large window opens. And we've had a donor at Project Support that's helped us with a lot of projects. And this donor wrote us and said, do you still have your match for the veranda grant? And I said, sure. And because we collected it, what are we gonna do with it, And they said, we'll pay for the rest of it.
Oh my gosh,
I know, that's why I sat down.
that's amazing.
I know, that's why I
Awesome.
sat down and why we will be here in July. Because the donor wants to get started as soon as possible. We're still using the same plan, the plans drawn up by Barbara, except that nobody I talked to wants that wooden porch. It's fire hazard, it'll make getting building insurance impossible. And I have a picture of the building in 1909 and a little tiny snippet from a newspaper article that says that a new veranda and a large cement porch were put onto the Bellevue Hotel. So that is within our, what did they call it?
Period of significance.
Yeah, the period of significance, which was up to 1920.
Mhm.
So we can still qualify, I believe, with the standards, interior standards and get preservation.
With this, and this would just be an adjustment to the COA?
Well, for the veranda, we will, I think in July, we'll just do a COA approval
Oh, okay.
or review, I guess, for approval. But yeah, you know, it took me 30 seconds to find a photo from 1926 that had cement. Which obviously is outside the period of significance, but.
Well, and the one I have, I don't know when it is, but it said, the picture says the hotel was named Bellevue at the time. So that corresponds with the newspaper snippet. So, and that was labeled 1909. So I think we're within there. The contractor that we put in for the veranda grant, he wants to do this. And he will not do it if it doesn't meet the standards to the Department of the Interior. So I'm feeling really safe, you know, that I can also use the veranda for my tax credits, you know, those kinds of things. Because he said, I don't want to do it if it's going to cost you your tax credit on that building. So, yeah. So we'll be back in July. My donor wants to get started as soon as possible. I wrote him out all this stuff. He had questions and I wrote a long email this morning answering all those questions. And the only email I got back was said, start the process.
Because this only happened, yeah, basically today, because I was planning this last week to just have a little update about the, you know, brickwork, but
Now we're into, there's an update for it.
Yeah, but that's exciting because I think grants are gonna become harder and harder, particularly for historic preservation.
Yeah, well, and the last time I applied for the veranda, one of the reviewers actually wrote that they didn't feel there was an urgency to doing the veranda because it's just decorative. I know, it's the icing on the cake. Yes, it's decorative, but it's what makes the building the building. So, yeah, Barbara, the architect, did not design as ornate as what the original pictures are, but it is period,
Okay,
and it will be great.
I'm excited to see it.
Oh, you have to walk by it every day because it changes every day.
I was just gonna say, I drove through one day and it was still bluish purple, whatever that last color was. And then the next day, it's looking like brick, and I was like,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it's a fast process.
Yeah.
They put the goop on, put paper on, wait 24 hours, take it off, scrub it. They use a light power wash on it, let it dry for a day. In the meantime, they moved on to another section. Then they come back, they put the second coat on, do the same process to it, but it just keeps moving on and on and on. I mean, the whole front end top didn't take the 4 days out of the week.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to COA.
And I'll bring the contractor to July, so that.
Oh, that would be great. We like that.
And pictures, we like pictures too.
Oh, well, here's the other thing. We have a time-lapse camera over at the top of Tommy Knockers at the highest point. And it's pointing right now to the front of the building, and so it takes a picture every hour between 7 in the morning and 5 at night. And so when we get done, we will make this little movie about the process.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
we're looking for
Yeah.
that. Now that they've moved over to the west side of the building, the library has said we can put the camera either, it's kind of where the rain gutter is,
Mhm.
as long as we don't disturb it, because it is,
Get somebody up there, please carefully.
yeah, no, we won't disturb anything there. And, we can pull the cord in through the transom window, the first transom window, and have power, and we'll continue doing that. When we get to the back of the building, we will, I think Scott Pennell owns that house that's across the alley from us.
Does Scott in that one? I don't know.
They've been for sale for a while.
So it's not for sale anymore. Somebody's there, but I don't know if they're there full time or not. But I'll ask them, same thing, can I open a window, put my little camera out there and continue to take pictures and have a movie?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And then we'll put the movie on our website. I've got to make a page now to let the people who were so kind and donated so much money. We have, I don't know, like $140,000.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, excellent. And then when you do need to move it to the library, let us know because we can get public works up there.
Oh, no, Ryan's already said they can use his lift and put it up there.
We have other issues with library gutters, so I want to make sure that we're very careful with anything where we are.
Oh, well, we're gonna try to stay away from the gutter. We're gonna try to, however he's gonna connect it so that it does not.
We'll
damage.
definitely let's have public works,
Oh, okay,
contact for that one.
okay,
At least to coordinate, I suppose.
okay.
Okay, and I wanted to, I guess, as a last note on this, which I was not anticipating originally having a meeting in July. The normal scheduled third Tuesday of the month, I'm out. Which obviously HRC can have a meeting without me, of course, but I wanted to mention that now to say if we'd rather move the date of the meeting, let's say 1 week, which would be second, for example.
I am also out that week of the 14th.
Oh, the 14th.
So the same week, you
You guys are both out?
and I say we move it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that we move it, but let's make sure with the rest of the commission.
I am out on the 14th.
Oh, then.
Would you be available?
Where y'all
the
going? Maybe we
following
wanna go
week?
too.
I'm going to saltwater soak in Maine, so.
I'm going to
No, that's
Maine,
not
right there.
Would you be around the following week, the second, if we did a week there? I know that Donna, for you, that means.
Oh, I don't know,
people by
he'll
1
just
week.
show up, Hopefully, we will have our permit and he will, I don't think he's gonna be able to get after the work until late August to September.
Oh, sure, perfect, okay, great.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask how fast he was moving, like, could July actually happen, but.
No, August to September, it depends on his other work. He says they have a lot of jobs that are in the process of permitting. Some places take longer, like the county here takes. City, not so much, but we don't have to deal with the county, which is a great thing.
So what did we say, the 22nd?
Erica, will that work for you?
22nd, good, okay.
Mike, does that work for you?
I will have to check.
Okay,
Probably works.
we'll just have to let Shannon know as well.
We'll tentatively say that, but if anyone has a conflict or something, we obviously are not set by code to have it on a Tuesday even, so we could move it to
Right.
a different day of the week.
Now,
Good,
John,
thanks.
the contractor, is coming tomorrow on his way home from another job and stop at the project support to look at everything. He wants to give us a solid bid,
Okay,
which he says may not vary very much from what he did for this, for the grant and that, but he wants to make sure. And we have some ideas on that like to keep it, but we've got some brick deterioration where the wall meets the porch. And wanna make sure that that's good, but it's not everywhere. It's not like the whole section is deteriorated. There's like sections like this that may be 2 to 3 bricks high. Some are really bad and some are just kind of, and so they kind of want to see what's down there and do we have to take the whole line out? Ryan's not a fan of that because it's evidently not getting water in there now because it is protected, but they want to make sure. I don't want that building coming down there.
No, you don't wanna fix it just to have, water get in.
Yeah, but Jeremy has always been no on the wood porch because it's such a fire hazard.
Well, given the way that insurance is going in this
What
county,
insurance?
if you can, yeah, if you can
There is
just.
no insurance in this county.
Don't say that.
Well,
There's still some.
there's the state, fair, accounts. But they're doing residential, they're not doing commercial yet, so.
You have a lot of companies that pulled out of the,
Yeah,
mountain residential, even you can't,
Yep.
I can't get my house insurance,
no, we're
Oh,
doing.
mine is, it's costing the earth, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
The National Trust has someone who specializes in insurance.
yeah,
So-
they have Chubb and, nope,
Mm.
my insurance broker has checked them all. And if you wanna pay $100,000 a year for insurance, that's okay.
but not everything's gonna be covered.
And we don't have $100,000
No.
to do that. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, $100,000, you'd be partially on your way to a little bit of self-insurance.
yeah, but we don't have it, so, yeah. And, so, I mean, we do okay in the thrift shop, but it pays the building's ordinary monthly bills, what we bring in. And a manager for the shop, and, and that's pretty much it. We have some stock that, Mr. Hall left us, I think it's Bob Hall, left us, a few thousand shares of P&G. But that's like very emergency money, not just to buy insurance.
Yeah, interesting.
So, yeah. Anything more?
Is there anything more from you?
Oh, God. If you still want to donate, that'd be fine. No, it's just really exciting not in my wildest dreams when I heard that we didn't, and this all happened in the same day. It was Friday the 13th is what it was, that the notices went out and I read the email and it said you were declined and I thought, oh, my heart just sank.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, okay, I'll go ahead and apply in October. And then this donor emailed right away. And so it was like a down, up,
For sure.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. So.
It's fantastic.
That's awesome. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you for the update.
And I'll see you on July 22nd.
Yes.
Is,
Oh, and thank you for the flowers to City Hall. Thank you for the flowers. They are beautiful. And it always is so pretty down that street. Absolutely. I wish they just keep.
is there press coverage of the project?
Not yet. We had, Amy Wattis from Channel 7 that did the little snippet when they did their Denver 7 Cares. And I texted her and told her that they had started the project, but I had not heard back from her. She has moved up in rank at Channel 7, so I don't know, maybe I'll just have to email her rather than text her and have her come out. Or she may be waiting for more to be done, and not a interim kind of thing. I find it interesting that the current hasn't come out at all to see or say anything.
The in progress shots right now, it's very photogenic because
Yeah.
you've got kind of before and after in process. And if they wanted to get some
Yeah. And you have-
B-roll to have,
Yeah.
that would be a good time to do it.
You've got the, process. Because some of the brick is exposed and
Right.
some of it's covered with the paper and stuff like that. They, oh, that was the other thing. They have to put their lip on the sidewalk near the front door because scaffolding is 10 feet wide. And there isn't 10 feet there to put scaffolding up, so they will do it with their lift. The way they work, they'll have it all papered in one day, and then they'll put the lift back on the street in its parking spot. And then the next day to the day after that, they'll take it off, do all the wash and everything, and then they'll probably have to put it up again. It just depends on how it comes off. That wall came off really well with one coat. And so, it just depends on how that upper wall does. So, yeah, I was so pleased with not very many of those bricks up there.
Absolutely.
Channel 4 is usually pretty good about coming out to Idaho Springs.
Yeah.
I forget who the guy is. That is our partner, but not Summit, so. Maybe.
Maybe Matt Purdue, because he's been here and maybe Channel 9 would.
I just call him up.
See who bites.
Or, what's his face? Who goes to the conference every year? He's on Channel 4, the weatherman.
His name is totally escaping me. I've seen him like 3 or 4 times
I see him, yeah.
every year.
What is his name?
He always does whatever the 3 buildings are that they're focused on that year.
Mike Nelson.
Yes.
Oh, really? That's a nice guy.
Yeah,
He's retired, isn't
Yes.
yeah, it's not Mike Nelson, it's somebody else.
I'm not as clued in there, yeah.
Well, he's at the conference all the time and he does the ones that are coming up for the stuff that they're gonna redo. I
CPI
saw that light
focus.
bulb go on.
Yeah, see, the CPI focus
I don't know.
project.
Signal and luncheon,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
well, I could find that name then easily in the program for this.
But he would be a good one to call because he's involved in HPRC anyway.
Oh.
Historic preservation, he comes to the conference they have every year.
Oh.
And they do a little program and then it actually shows on TV after we get to see it first at the conference. And so I think he would be I bet he'd be really interested in it. And
And
Dylan will get his name and number for you.
and the state is coming tomorrow, well, probably to see the process and the progress
Mhm.
of our building, everything and all. I will tell her that I'm gonna be using stake for this, but we are going to be following the Department of Interior standards.
Which is what they want.
Yep. And that's what I want, because it will give me my tax.
You do want that too.
So, all right.
All right, thank you, Donna, so
Thank you very
much. We will
much.
see you next month.
And well, I hope to see you coming by and looking
Well, I
at
go
it.
by every day and look at it, so.
Yeah.
All right, Dylan, our comprehensive plan update.
Yes, well, because we talked about the comprehensive plan as I was kicking it off, I thought it would be a good time to give an update since we haven't met in quite a while. But I am keeping our surveys and data collection stuff open through basically the end of the month. Gotten really good survey responses. I've been doing these weekly coffee chats and people have come every week and the big topic has been historic preservation, community charm and character and all these things. I think partially it's because they've seen some big projects happening around town that they don't really think fits with the neighborhood character and charm that they know and love. And so they kind of said, well, how do I get involved in influencing that or protecting it? So I think that's quite positive and I'll have more of an update as we keep moving forward. I haven't even looked at the survey results yet, but I have like 65 or 70 responses, which is
That's pretty good for us.
not horrible.
No, it's pretty good.
The big thing, because of all of the historic charm stuff that I've been getting, I scheduled this meeting that's coming up in about a week or so. That's kind of going to be sort of a roundtable, like get together and talk kind of meeting for the community to top priorities. My plan is to give a bit of like an update or just kind of info session at the start, where you say, well, this is our downtown historic district, and that's what that means, and you know, this is sort of what opportunities you have if you're a residential owner, which is not a lot because we don't have a historic district. And then go into the survey that was done a couple of years ago to talk about, well, are people interested in that? And all those things, because I've talked to a few people. I was at the Burling's Fest. This was only last
Oh, didn't you have a
weekend.
table at the Furling Fest? You and
Yes.
the chicken.
I talked to about 30 people that day too. Yeah, you brought the chickens over here.
His wife takes the chickens for a walk in the stroller.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, it's fun.
It's pretty fantastic, actually.
But there was a few people who said, oh, wow, like, how do I get tax credits or something for my house? Or like, how do we do this? Because I had this survey there. So I'm trying to use this meeting next week to kind of say, well, let's really dig into what community wants to see and if there is room for a change, or room for potentially moving forward with some survey work to get done in like the West End potential district and things like that. So I think it should be fun.
So out of curiosity, were you talking to longtime residents or newer residents?
I would say mostly newer residents. I was shocked by the number of like young people who came up and then were talking to me, and then they were like, we live here at this, you know, street or this street, and they're all within city limits, which was, you know, I'm like around town all the time since I live here and work here, and I don't ever see them around, or maybe I just assume they're tourists or something. But there's quite a lot of people who moved here and said like, one of the big reasons we moved here is because it's so cute and like has this feel to it. And so I think even though like a project like the field house, old Gold Digger field development will bring additional people in and more families and opportunities and housing for folks. I think there's a fear from people, especially who live on the West End, that we'll just end with some more of that over time. So.
I'm hoping though, and this is slightly off topic, but when the 4 Points folks did their design presentation to us, they were looking at more of like right now it looks very bland. And they had presented and proposed something that was more in line with like the mill look, because it's right there by the creek and, you know, this is.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that they stick to that. I don't know.
Well, building permits and things like that did show all.
They did show all
kind
of that.
stuff. And so obviously if they have a change orders on those, then theoretically they will submit their new building permit.
I would hope
Or the
so.
approval, but.
Like that theory.
It's, the other big one, I think, as we get into the topic of the 2-block buffer, that's going to be a big potential implication for the town is Carlson Elementary School.
Can I say that out loud?
Because, for anyone who's not aware, the Carlson Elementary, where the elementary school used to be, and it's now just a vacant building, is under contract.
Not till next year, it'll close till next year though.
Right, so it's a very long contract, but they're under contract and they're working on sort of like a proposal and funding for housing that would be affordable housing. And the key thing with that is even without talking about the 2-block buffer and potentially updating it, it's clearly within the buffer of the historic district. So we will have a lot more, we as a city will have a lot more opportunity to influence architectural design, but only because they're within this boundary.
And that proposal is to utilize the building or replace the building?
Replace.
Clear it. So it's just, okay.
I would say almost certainly this developer would be scraping the building
Mhm.
and building taller and in order to fit the parking.
The front of the building is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 1937. That front part of the elementary, I think, is 1937, so it's not it's very utilitarian, like
Right.
deco.
Right.
the back of the building, I think, is seventies,
Yeah, it's
eighties,
kind of
so
added on
it's,
over.
it's not it's not a historically designated building on any level.
Right.
I would have liked it to have been, but
Mhm.
I did not win that fight.
Yeah, definitely what happens there will have a big effect on the.
It shows up on the Sanborn map that's for the period 31 to 39.
Well, but our period of significance is to only until
So,
July.
but I mean, it actually is on a map.
Right, so it would have been in the, if 1937 would have been in the ballpark. I think it does have a field stone that says.
It does, well, but also
Yes, sir.
the owners have to be amenable to that, and they were not amenable to that. To moving us into
Right.
any kind of moving that building, even just the front of the building, into any kind of designation. They were not interested at all.
So, regardless, there's still an effect on the historic district. Development.
Well-
Exactly.
Going back to the comprehensive plan, just for those of you who are not here, this has been something that Mike and Patty will know, we've talked about this over the years. Like at least 2, if not 3 historic districts that are Idaho Springs historic districts, because East End, Central Idaho Springs, which is that area around the historic district, and then West End have very different characters. I would love to see it myself. I would love to help residents find ways to get tax credits.
Right, and Eric, did I send you the like the guideline and the survey plan and all of those things? Or-
No, but it's on the website and.
Yeah, but I'll still, tomorrow I'll email you some of the sort of more relevant and or useful and interesting things.
And the HDR survey, which is less than 10 years old, it's 2018. There's almost 100 completed survey forms that the city has. And one of the things besides the buffer is that there are a large number of historic going east on Minor. There's a very large number of houses
Yes.
on Minor that have been surveyed already. And there's a great detail of information, so if we need to be looking at more guidelines that are oriented to small residential structures, the information's already there. Going the other direction to the west, HDR basically did structures and mobile homes that were closer to the interstate, as opposed to, there's not a lot on Colorado, but again, like I said, it's almost 100 forms that they completed. So we have all that data already, and it's still, 7 years old now. So it's not that old.
And there's an earlier survey too, right?
Yeah, there's a number of earlier surveys and they're all mentioned in the survey plan. But I think in terms of having like really complete data on buildings, probably the HDR is the best of all the surveys.
But you might be able to just update those older forms too, because I remember, man, I don't remember what year my house was surveyed, but it was way before 2018, but the information.
Yeah, I think there was a major survey in 2002 and
Yeah.
there's basically, I think, there were 4 main surveys that she focused on in the survey plan. But like I said, the data's already there from HDR.
Well, I would like that, and we can always, one of the things that I also find very helpful is if you look at somewhere like Boulder, and Boulder has 11 different historic districts. One of which is 5 houses. Because it was a block that has a particular architect who built these 5 houses. I would be totally amenable to that as well.
Sure, well,
If people want it, because that's, I think, our biggest problem with historic districts is, do people want it?
right, well, that's the thing is, that was the question that I had was, would people really want this, or would they feel like it was pushing it? But at least through this start of this company's plan process, I've talked to close, probably 10 people who have said that they're at least interested because they realize how important it is.
That's exciting because that's a shift. That is a departure from what we've heard
Right.
in earlier years.
I mean, I certainly heard also some concern about, well, does that mean that my project to redo my 3 windows that need to be fixed is going to become much more expensive? You know, these are things, yeah.
Windows are going to be expensive anyway up here.
I think it has to be in the way that it's presented to them, because I don't think most people understand what it is, and they tend to gravitate towards the negative. So if we can explain it in a very positive manner, how it's going to benefit them versus this is what we're gonna do, I think we're getting a lot better results and buy-in.
One thing for the survey plan, there were 7 recommendations, and when we discussed it, we prioritized 4. One of which was public information, education, engagement type of thing. And so it would be better as a committee or whatever to have a better focus on how to present this information to the public before going out and saying we'd like to draw boundaries someplace.
Oh, I agree. Well, I think your coffee chats have been really inspired.
Well, and
And
that's,
setting up a table at Burling's Fest was a great idea.
well, that's my thought with this meeting on the 25th is just present some initial information to say, this is why, yeah, this is historic preservation in Idaho Springs, and, you know, if you're continue to be interested in it, this is directions we could potentially go. But I think a lot of people know this is a historic district, but they don't really know what that means. And so, because I've talked to enough people about it, I figured, well, maybe I'll only get 3 people, who knows, maybe I'll get 100. But I'm hoping to get, you know, a handful of people, 10 something people to just have a conversation. And then the one on July 8th, I think, could attract more people because I'm kind of opening myself up to say, hey, like, what do you want? But what do you want to do to your property? Can you do it? You know, like, and I'm thinking it's almost like a workshop to say like, oh, you live here in town. Do you like not like what your neighbor's gonna do? Well, here's what they could do 10 years from now. And could you really see 3 huge apartment buildings next to your house? And if you don't want to see that, you live in one of those areas, what do you want to change? You know, so I think hopefully we'll get good engagement.
One other thing that's in the survey plan is there's a map that shows over 300 properties, and it puts them according to periods in which they were constructed. And I'm thinking in the comprehensive plan, it would actually be better to substitute that in rather than the map we have now of downtown, because we can always draw a new boundary around downtown.
Right.
But this basically shows there literally are hundreds of buildings that have some historic value just on age alone.
Which I don't think that people always recognize, but I think it's also important. I mean, we've talked to in here, you all know, we've talked to 2 people that have come up for COAs that when they bought the building, did not know it was a historically registered building. Like, had no idea. You know, I like, how do you buy a building and and the realtor doesn't say, hey, by the way, this is in a national historic district.
They might not want to tell them.
Do you not file anything with the county? I mean, usually so that it would come up in a title search?
It does not come up in the title search.
Yeah.
That could be something to ask, what's her name? Donna G, who's our assessor. Because it doesn't. I mean, you don't see anything about that, it's in the National Historic District.
It really should be showing up. That's title report,
Well, I'll look into that because
because it is a limitation on the use of the property, so it should be in Schedule B, Part 2.
It has created problems when people have come in for a COA as well, and they don't understand why they have, you
right,
know, a much smaller box of what you can do.
right. I would not be surprised if some of these property owners did not read Schedule B. You know,
Almost no one ever knows unless you deal with it on a regular
Right.
basis. People don't know about, in the back of the report,
Mhm.
there's all this information, including that schedule. It tells you everything that's not covered by your insurance.
Right, so, you know, it's possible that it does show up on title, but people just don't
You
know it, but.
want it to show up right where the zoning is
Yeah,
cited.
Well,
It's the same
that's
sort of-
true. I mean, we do have its own historic downtown, so it says, I guess people maybe don't know what that means, right?
Yeah,
But if you're building, I don't know, I just feel like if you're buying a commercial building, you should talk to the city and say, hey, what can I do with this before you spend a lot of money on it?
And I think that becomes part of the public information thing in terms of creating a very simple, cheap brochure and sending it to all of the realtors.
Hmm.
So at least say like once a year, mailing them something and saying, by the way, here are the properties.
I think that's a great idea, but I also think what we're seeing with the people that Dylan is talking to, it's people moving from seeing HPRC and that oversight as a weight or a millstone versus it's something to be proud of. I have a historic building. I love this building. I want to make sure it, endures, it still looks beautiful. That's huge.
Right, I was talking to one person in particular who came from Richmond, Virginia. They're like, they have like the fan district or something that it's quite a,
Oh, those
Impact.
districts, make us look like
yeah.
toddlers.
It's like a district where it's like just a residential district, and they moved from there to here. And I think if we get people like that who understand the value of having your home in the district as an ally and kind of advocate, that would be quite powerful, actually.
Well, I'll be here next Wednesday to support you. I'll be one of your, 10 people.
I will do some more advertising of this.
Can we put it in the group too, in the community group?
I think it did get put in there, and then I have to review the date of the zoning meeting. But I know it got posted in there originally, but since we're about a week out now, I'm gonna hit hard with some advertising on
Okay.
those channels. So anyway, that's the update there. And I think as we get through June into July, I'm gonna start analyzing all the data I've gotten. And so then I'll give a presentation sort of on, this is what I found historic preservation wise.
Perfect.
Good.
All right, go ahead.
sometimes, opposition lies low
Hmm.
and then springs up.
You've been here for the parking meetings.
Yeah, well, I don't know, it's been my experience in other places, so I can't imagine it's all that different here, and then you wanna make sure there's enough good feeling and good information out there to counter that, when and if it should
I thought you were
happen.
gonna say good snack.
Snack, right.
At least people won't be angry, you know.
Hey, no angry, yeah, just angry.
Just make an anonymous Facebook post that says you wanna make the entire city a district.
Oh my,
People will come.
nothing
Yeah.
is anonymous.
That's true. If I want people to go.
Honestly, I would just put my name on it and call it a day, because people know where I stand on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, the Idaho Springs Library update.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot on this, other than I think we may or may not be getting a COA eventually for this, and I kind of wanted to get some input on a particular item. There's a lot of work going on the inside because there was some kind of water damage from when people had stepped on the gutter in the back of the building and poured the ice water melt, and that got water in, but
It was vandalism. They got up on the chimney and they spray painted along the chimney, and while in the process, they stepped on some of the older gutters and it ripped out like the waterproof barrier behind the gutter.
I'm flashing.
And then, the flashing, thank you. And then if you go into the library and you see on the
it's on the south or the
west wall,
southwest wall.
the southwest wall, there's a huge spot that indicates water damage on the top level. And then the bottom level is an equally big spot and it smells moldy according to the librarian. So this is an ongoing issue.
Though, and then there's been a few other interior issues that I'm sure you know about, right? Like at the stairs going down.
I did not hear about the
Some sort of
stairs.
condensation issue that basically caused the plaster on the ceiling to fall off. So anyway, long story short, that's not the purview of this mission, but
No,
there will be work going on there. But one of the things that they're talking about is putting a cap on the chimney.
yes,
And I wanted to pick everyone's brains on whether a cap on the chimney would be a small project exception, or if it would be, like, if we should just have it with the COA, because the other things exterior that need to be done. ASAP really is repainting all the trim, which painting, is normally considered a small project
project.
exception, and then also refinishing the doors, the front wooden doors.
That is
face
not a small
east.
project.
And so that should have the CUA. And I suppose if they work at the same time, you just include the cap of the chimney, but.
Was there a cap historically? Do you have any old photos to show if there was a cap?
I would need to look
Because
into,
otherwise it is a change to the exterior.
right, and if that's the case, then yeah, I guess we would unquestionably need the COA. I think
Okay,
the other thing they were trying to do is whether they could do some sort of cap that was recessed within the chimney, so it wouldn't actually be visible.
it doesn't, I'm looking at the two chimneys, and this is an older picture, it does not look like it.
So then I think we should just lean towards, I have a 1904 photo, but it doesn't show, no, I don't see the chimney in it. Anyway, I think probably when in doubt, right, we should just have it come in. It would be a city project. I'll pass that along to our public works team, to say that before they go installing anything, we want to get it on.
Please.
And I talked to Ed Sigward, who's our acting public works superintendent, and he is attending the next sites and facilities meeting, kind of to give an update on everything. He got the water wheel running again.
I saw that.
There's just like, I don't think that aren't really visible. So anyway, he's happy to be more involved in the storm
Excellent.
preservation process.
And the other thing, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna shout out that.
If project support is going to put their camera on there, it needs to go through us. Full stop.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Well, that, I didn't get that sense that that was clearly understood or accepted, and it needs to go through us. This is, it's great the guy's willing to let us use his lift, but it needs to go through us so that nothing is damaged, because the kids stepping on that gutter created the hole in the flashing. You know,
So I'll get Donna in touch with Ed and Andy to say, when you're going to install the camera, make sure to get Ed on site so they can coordinate that and get it up there properly and protect it.
no, please.
Okay, so that was all I had on that. I just thought, and the other thing that's just kind of interesting is the Potter House is almost complete. They're just waiting on the door.
Really? Oh my God, that's so exciting. They've been so quick on
And
that.
so my plan is, once the door is installed, to do like a ribbon cutting. And
Yes.
I'll invite all of you. It won't be like a park or anything yet, but it looks really good already. So that's,
Have either of you seen the powder? Did you all see the powerhouse before the work started on it? It was very sad.
I can,
We sent,
Some pictures.
the
Where is
before,
this?
after.
it's going up towards the transfer station. And it's over on the left-hand side. Is it that curve right before
Yeah,
the
it's the
transfer
curve to the
station?
Little Bear Road. There's like a big
Goes off to the
pile
left.
of dirt that's just stored right there, and it looks like it's just like someone's driveway, but there's an old historic powder house that is on it's a locally designated site. And we had a COA for that, earlier this year, I guess. But yeah, they got right on it and, it's, 99% complete. They did all the punch list
That's
stuff.
awesome.
They just were fabricating the
Door.
iron door.
Yeah, because it was a solid iron door, and we don't actually know what the pictures of that look like, but they're going, the architects that did this went off of, like, there's two other powder houses in Colorado that had a similar construction and a similar design, and they both had solid iron doors, so. Because we don't have a picture, we included it because it was period appropriate. And I think isn't the door also going to have like a like a plexiglass?
I think the plan is to kind of have like a mesh, like a grate sort of door, so you'd see through it, but it still is like protective. And so then you could just open
the seat,
like the full door and still have the see-through like metal, so it's more secure.
because it was also a dumping ground and a party place.
Right.
Do we have any idea on when the rest of the park aspect of that is going to happen?
That I'm not sure on, it's not planned yet, but I think it would be a relatively small expense. Sites and Facilities had talked about kind of assessing whether there's any visitorship and things like that,
In
but,
general, they're not sure if there should be a park there.
but I
But
don't
that's not
think,
their determination to
No,
make.
but that's something they,
Well, they could come talk to council about that, because council already said that is a point. We don't have enough parks in
And
Palm Springs.
I really think no one is going to know it's there or visit it unless there's something to draw people there, even if it's just some little bit of landscaping work and a couple picnic tables and some interpretive signage.
and that's all that's in the plan.
Right,
And like 3 parking spaces.
No, but there was a ability for the kids to put their feet in the water.
right, like a bit of like a stair
Yeah.
down to the water sort of thing.
And
So
Is
anyway.
it something that might fit into the two-wheel tourism and stuff that will be happening in town?
I think it
I
could,
think
it's a
so.
relatively short cycle up the,
It's not very
it's
far
like
at
a
all.
mile and a half,
Just
just
a,
past the
just a
hot
thought,
springs.
one more little
Well,
thing on the.
and that is a route that people will drive up Little Bear to go up and over to Evergreen, I think, if they want the like scenic route. So I think, and it's just like so different than any of our other areas, 'cause it's a beautiful little wooded site.
And it seems like you see vehicles parked nearby often.
That's true.
Including trucks, like a driver's just decided to stop there.
Well, I know that is the end of a downhill mountain bike trail that people shuttle, so they'll park right there. And then they shuttle up to the top and then they ride down, so if it was a park with picnic tables, I bet they'd use it. And at Burlington Fest, I talked to a, couple who lives within, let's say, a stone's throw of it, and they were excited that it was fixed up and might be a little park area, so.
You know, you can also, besides the two-wheel pedal bike, you can, I'm sure there's motorcyclists that would stop there on a rest coming down the hill. Just take it off your bike and
Very true.
that's your boot.
The other thing that we had talked about, and I feel very strongly about this, is that there's really nowhere for people to get in the water here. Like, it's not safe to be in Clear Creek. We've had umpteen discussions about not, encouraging swimming because it can be dangerous. But this is just, it's just, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just from the dam, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty low flow.
So it's a low flow, so this is somewhere where people could put their feet in the water and actually enjoy the water of a county that's called Clear Creek.
And that water actually goes to the, waterfall at the water wheel. From that little dam down through this potential park area into the waterfall, so it's kind of a cool little journey that water takes.
And that's something that we don't have any access to water here unless you get on, with the rafting guides or you take your own liability, like you certainly can't bring your kids there. So for me, like, and when that park was not proposed to be something that was really expensive to do.
Right, well, I think it's cheap enough that you wouldn't really need grant funding, but GoCo was just here giving like a roadshow presentation thing, public thing today. And that got brought up as a potential thing, and that was be a great use of GoCo funds, so.
Awesome.
Can't you get in the water over when they move that bridge? And reminding the kids, because it's a fishing spot now, and I think,
I mean, over by the,
yeah,
by the
just before
tunnels,
the tunnels, yeah.
Lancaster, where the
Yeah.
Lancaster Bridge was.
Because they made that into a
right.
fishing area for the
Right.
fly fishers and stuff, and so that whole little section there that they've kind of hollowed out isn't fast, and I think you can go.
But would you put your 2-year-old in there?
Well, I didn't have a 2-year-old.
You
first
understand what
off.
I'm saying, though? Like,
I put my dog in there.
Hazel's got a bit more than like the average 2-year-old.
That's,
So I would love for us
Yes,
to
cover
look into that then, Dylan, about applying for a GoCo grant for that. Cause I don't, I don't
Awesome.
remember, but I don't think the city has voted to do the park, just the powder house.
It's not in this year's budget.
No, it's not, I think it
No,
was just the
but-
powder house itself.
Mhm.
But if it was in the budget, potential budget item for next year anyway, because I think the quote was only, I mean, they didn't get like an official quote, but. $10,000 or something, not like $100,000, so. That's probably. Anyway,
Okay. And then, anything else on the library?
it's for me, but we
Alright.
may see a COA before then.
Excellent. New business, the 2-block buffer update.
Yes, so we had talked about this as part of our like work plan and with, as I alluded to, with a big project coming up nearby. It's a good time to sort of revisit this and see what we can do and what we can't do and all of that. And I think when we talked last, we'd mentioned, well, it's great that we have this 2-block buffer, but the concern that I have is what is a 2-block, like what's 2 blocks? Like it's not super clear. Like especially if you go east, like what's 2 blocks away from the boundary?
And I think actually, if you look at it, it's much bigger than what you had drawn, particularly if you're talking about going
Yeah,
north. It
Right.
it encompasses everything, everything going north in terms of the last houses.
Virginia,
On both sides of the
the
street.
south side of Virginia.
And there's a little more to the northeast that
Mhm.
probably should be added. And then a little more to the west that should be added to
Right.
it. I mean, I think the way you drew the boundary, that looks fine, but it's sort of almost a philosophical question. Is there an issue with drawing it as big as what 2 blocks really means? Because when we look at a map, it's sort of, people sort of take, they look at it and then what is actually a half block, people sort of take that as a block.
Sure.
Because the alleys have names. But if you're talking about full city blocks, it's everything to the north.
All the way up to.
All the way,
basically
including,
Wall
you know,
Street.
yeah, basically everything, all until there's no more houses as you go north
And just based on the definition.
of a city block. In other words, not half blocks, but full city blocks.
Right, so you'd be saying like Minor Street to Colorado is 1 block.
Well, it's, in other words, that's only a half a block to start out with. Then you have a full block and then you have another half block in order to come up with 2 blocks. I think the buffer, the way I've always taken the buffer is the buffer means from the exterior perimeter of the district, you go out a 2-block distance.
Right.
And a 2-block distance is going to be approximately 500 to 600 feet. Based on what's a typical block in Idaho Springs. If you go half block alley, half block, that's gonna be like around 260, 270 feet, then you've got another street, then you got another block again. So really, that's about, but probably even more than 600 feet in terms of just what is a city block. in
Instead
Idaho
of doing
Springs.
blocks, couldn't you just do feet?
That's,
Yeah, well, and that's the question I think Dylan raised as to, there's different ways of doing it. And I guess it's sort of a question of what is it we're trying to do? If you wanna say, what's the biggest area? You could go with, okay, what is 2 blocks? Which is really city blocks, and that is gonna actually enlarge it quite a bit from what was in the packet. If you want to just put a distance in, then that sort of becomes arbitrary as to what distance you want to put in. Like I said, it's a city block from center of street to center of street is gonna be close to 300 feet.
Is there any kind of standard as to what a block size should be?
It varies and you sort of look at your own community, like, it's actually based upon whoever did the subdivision, what size blocks they wanted to make. Like blocks here are about the same size as blocks in Georgetown because they're same historic period, but as time went on, you got into the suburban period, blocks became much bigger than what you find. In other words, they became like 600 or 700 feet long.
Well, you do, I mean, I think Mike is right, because if you take like 13th Ave and 12th, it's exactly 300 feet essentially. So 2 blocks would be
600 feet.
600 exactly. And so if you take it the other direction, we could go up.
It'll be a little longer that way because in that direction downtown is 12 lots, so I think that's what 12 lots is going to be. No, the blocks are 320 feet long, and then plus a street would throw in maybe another 50 or 60 feet, depending on the street. So in the east-west direction, it's about 370 is the length of a downtown block.
So if somebody either wants to be in or out, the first 6 months of argument is, am I or am I not in?
If you're
Buffer.
close to
So-
that, yeah, I think, I mean, I already have,
It's not a good thing to be discussing, it ought to be,
well, and because we don't define explicitly the block distant, like
Right.
this is defined as a block, that's, so clearly, drawing this up, it's clearly not enough.
right,
And I think that gets to it is if the intent is to begin to enforce this, and I only did one building when I was here, 1800 Washington, where fortunately they went along with what I
Sure.
said they should be doing, on the building. But there's really two things, okay, what, are you in or out? And then what does architectural style means? Because there's only, it lists, the code lists three things. It says materials, architectural style, and design. Design in this context is sort of meaningless since you've got architectural style. So I think, again, going back to the survey, we now have a wealth of information to be able to define architectural styles for buildings other than commercial downtown.
Right.
And when in a report, she also has a much longer section on architectural style. And we had talked about, it didn't happen when we updated the survey, but there's a lot that could be taken almost directly from the survey plan in terms of how she went into more detail of explaining what are the architectural styles in town, to where she covers these different residential styles.
I think though too, when you look at, it just says in the design guidelines that it needs to be complementary to the historic district. I think there needs to be a little more definition with that, and honestly, what is our goal? Because when you look at these three examples that Dylan gave, they're to me, they present very different goals. I personally really like the very first one that you did that has the very big wide area, because my goal would be, I'd like to include everyone in some historic preservation, but I don't know that that's necessarily the best idea. That's just my personal preference. I think that what Breckenridge did, I like the transition. I think the idea of creating transitional areas is something that we're not going to get as much pushback on, and will be easier to define. That's just my thought process on this.
Well, I think that is definitely easier to define, but I think it's a lot more complicated to implement, because essentially
Something has to happen first, because it is the whole thing of the property owner has to buy in.
right,
If you're gonna create little districts surrounding downtown.
right, versus if the big change was really just saying, well, it's a 2 block, and because of,
It's a big area, and here's how architectural style is defined for the purposes of this code requirement. To where we give them a list of things that says, okay, here's the 5 or 6 things you have to do.
Right, well, and it does, I think I was hung up on the fact that we don't define what a block is, that I didn't look at the obvious thing in front of us, which is how far is it from 14th Ave to 15th Ave, clearly it's about 300 to 350, 370 feet. So 2 blocks would be double that from the outside boundary in any direction, and you basically have that.
And 750 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but it is much.
Well,
It's 2 blocks in the east-west direction.
right, it's a little more, it seems a little fuzzier, and, well, going east,
is different because the blocks are shaped very differently.
Right, but I think you can still use the whole, like, clearly, a block is about 300. Let's just say conservatively 300 feet, we still have 600 feet to work with in that direction and kind of with a straight face say that you need to, work within the boundaries. So in that sense, I maybe think we should just leave it as 2 blocks, but clarify that.
I think for the benefit of the property owners, it actually ought to have a boundary. So people know, are you in, are you out?
Right.
And like I said, it was fortunate in the one case I had to deal with, they were very amenable to doing it.
Mm.
But that may not be true of other property owners.
Well, right, and like in the case of Carlson Elementary, it's incredibly clear they're within it, even if you don't have any clarification, because they're touching district.
But it's just voluntary, right?
Well,
Is this strongly
it's a code requirement, but it's a should as opposed to a shall.
Is that one that we changed to a shall or?
No, this is in the code.
Actually,
It's not in the design guidelines.
Code, yeah, but talking with our city attorney, she said basically how it's written, it's essentially they need to do as much as they possibly can to comply. Like they aren't held to our standards, but if they say, well, we're gonna build this ultra modern building and we say, well, that clearly doesn't work, then that would be enough grounds to sort of deny it, I guess, based on her interpretation of how it's written.
And she's pretty conservative.
So she says, like, since it says strongly encouraged, it's essentially a requirement.
A shall.
But it's not officially a shall.
She told the other boards they can't have pre-application meetings. This is the only board that has pre-application meetings.
Right.
Really?
Yes,
Oh.
she was pretty adamant about that, and I was always sort of curious as why she never thought about. There's this board here that has it written into its own guidelines that you can have a pre-application meeting.
Yeah, it is interesting. in that
So, yeah,
way.
they spent an hour one time at planning commission. And basically her explaining why it's a bad idea to have pre-application meetings.
Whereas we have found that if we meet with the people beforehand, it's so much easier.
Yeah,
Like just
The application is right.
the application is right, but there's also, they're not doing things. We're not involved in stop work orders, which I really don't want us to be if we don't have to.
and the big way you present it as, before you spend a lot of money, let's talk about this.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I do think the relationship that this board has with like planning commission feels different. Because we have very clear standards that we've written up that say, do you meet it or do you not? And so having the opportunity to talk through those standards ahead of time seems reasonable, whereas if you're reviewing a conditional use permit for a towing company or something, what is there to negotiate sort of ahead of time, I guess, but, so I think on whether we do a foot or the block, maybe I think block actually makes sense the way you say it, and I've just drawn it.
It's the word in the code. So that makes it the most
And
defensible.
just keep it there, and I will just expand this boundary to better meet, what block actually
I like the
is.
idea though of saying, here are the things that if you're within this buffer zone, here are the things that you are strongly encouraged to do. If you do not feel that you can do, I think also you need to say, if you do not feel you can do this, there needs to be
Right,
some form of, how can they come and talk to us about it? Because strongly encouraged is not shall, even though Carmen says it's pretty much a requirement.
Well, it actually says should, but
well,
I'd say should as opposed to encourage, because should sounds a little closer to you have to.
It just doesn't sound legally defensible, I don't know.
So do they apply for COA?
they wouldn't have to,
No.
it would be sort of on staff and then the approving council to.
So there's no process at all.
Well, it's an architectural standard in chapter 21. There's a whole section on building design. And for the downtown area, it's just one paragraph. It says the buildings within 2 blocks should basically be reflect the character of the downtown area.
All right, so
Yeah.
so how does it get actualized? That's my question. You know,
Well, so if I'm building a new building in the city, I'm required to go through
the plan.
a final development plan, which goes to planning commission and city council for approval. That wouldn't be the case with like, you're building a new residential home, but then I would still review it as part of the building permit, and then if I say, well, this is totally out of character, then I could apply this, I suppose, because it does say new developments within the 2 block radius should build upon and support the architectural features of the district, and then it says use of historic district building materials, styles, and designs are strongly encouraged. So it actually says both, should and strongly encouraged.
And like I said, in the year and a half I was doing the planning, it was just one property that came up at all that time. And if you want to look at it, it's 1800 Colorado.
Right, it's like.
They were going to use a brick that looked like a ceramic tile. And I basically convinced them to do stone instead because it had a rusticated look. There's only a couple of stone buildings actually in the downtown area, but I had to go out and find examples to show them that yes, there actually are stone buildings.
So at the Carson Elementary site, they could basically say, you know, well, this is the projects that we're building.
Oh, okay.
And well, it's nice, we should do it, but this is what we're building. I mean, I just wonder what,
I think it would be sort of like the process that happened with the clinic, which was a county building, which there was kind of a lengthy negotiation over what that building looked like. And it kept getting worse. Their first design was by far the best design. And then they kept redesigning it.
It got worse and worse.
It'd just be a shame to test that out with a developer that probably doesn't care that much.
Well, and development that size.
Yeah.
Well, and I think their initial proposal is that to be largely brick, which then, you know, you say is, well, that might actually fit, because basically every building that's in the commercial area is brick.
And that hits one of the things that's listed, which is materials.
And, you know, it's, but, you know, it's.
yeah, there's brick and there's brick, I mean,
Right.
Like I said, on 1800 Colorado, they wanted to do something that literally looked like ceramic tile.
Yeah.
Even though it was a brick.
And I think the problem can be, like, I think if you're building just a single home or doing something small, it's easy to just implement little design nods and things like that, and then it works better. But in a large project where, you know, they're getting affordable housing funding and things like that,
right,
you could certainly see them say, well, we get it strongly encouraged and we should do it, but it's just gonna cost too much, and if we do that, then we can't be affordable and it won't happen at all. And so then it becomes, rather than a historic, like, you know, this commission saying, well, you have to do it because of these guidelines, it's basically on city council and planning commission to recommend denial because they don't think it meets this one section of code.
Yeah, and with the 1800 building, I mean, what it came down to was I had to basically show them how to do it.
Right.
In other words, if you've got someone who doesn't want to do it, you almost have to do that and saying, here, you can do this and it doesn't cost that much.
well, this is a big development project.
This is a huge,
major-
and I've seen the initial plan. It is not cute.
Well, and they've since
Such a-
rotated it 90 degrees, so the facade largely is on Minor Street rather than a parking lot, but regardless,
But
these are all conceptual.
Do you know who the architect is?
it's not pretty.
Not off the
How many
top of my head.
3. Yeah, so it'd be in that,
There's a
it's,
35-foot height.
there's a 35-foot height limit, so they have to stay, and we can't do it like. We're not gonna get anywhere if we're like, no, you can't be 34.5 feet, like, we're not gonna get anywhere with that one.
Yeah, essentially, like, if they needed any variances or any, like a rezoning or anything, I think we could hold them really strongly to the architecture, but otherwise we're relying on this.
This is gonna be a tough one, and this one's it's on the track, isn't it?
Well, it's gonna be a tough one, and it's
See,
gonna come through us, it's gotta go through planning, it's gotta go through city council.
Well, it wouldn't go to HPRC.
But if you said, no, this doesn't meet the buffer zone, that involves our design guidelines.
Right.
That planning doesn't necessarily look at.
But this committee hasn't been given jurisdiction in that 2 block area. It's been given jurisdiction in the historic district. So they would have a pretty strong argument that they don't have to come to HPRC.
But I would, as the, I guess, staff reviewer, like with 1800 Colorado, could still say, well, you know, it's not. It doesn't complement the district because this is what we look for in the district, and so this is really what we want to see if you meet the architecture, and I think, again, that would be.
Is the planning commission sympathetic?
Should be, I would think.
I mean, in specific.
I'm gonna go
Well,
with the
sure.
50-50 on that one.
I think the planning commission would certainly recognize the importance of a site within the close proximity of our sort of most important resource.
It's also the main entry into town. In other words, it's the way you want to bring people into.
It's the gateway into
Yeah.
240, because the way that the town is doing things is they're planning 240 as a gateway.
Right.
Into how do you get into down, like, everything is going to come out of there, with that roundabout and mobility hub and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So it can't be hideous. It can't.
Right. I mean, the first thing you see are a couple of gas stations already. And
Yeah, I
then,
like the Simple station. Yeah, there's 3. I do like the
And
Simple.
a charging
Right.
station.
regardless, I think on my first thing that I wanted direction on this buffer topic, what I think I will just redraw the boundary based on what an actual city block is, and then that will give a much better sense of this is the area we're talking about, and that's pretty easy to do, and I'll send that out
Okay.
this week and just say, hey, this is
Yeah.
what it looks like now, and that might check that box. On the subject of how do we protect or like make things stronger, I don't really know, other than doing something like this, transition areas that are an overlay, where essentially people do have to buy in, I don't really know how to do it.
From the architect's standpoint, it's sort of said, there's sort of 4 ways a new building can relate to an old building. And I don't know if you want to go that far to actually have something like that that explains there are these 4 different, there's actually 7, but there's 4 that are common ways of saying how you're going to relate something when you have a historic context, including all the way to not at all as one of the 4 types of approaches.
It feels to me like this, because I'm thinking about what you said about how do we actually activate this? How does this begin? And it becomes more when there's going to be either a tear down or a major renovation or revamping of a building. But that's when this would be an active concern in the planning process.
It suggests as a way of approaching it, you have a design of what they want to do. And we as a committee could look at, okay, what would we want them to do? In terms of, okay, here are what makes the architectural styles that are here. And sort of from that list of what makes an architectural style, what would we as a committee say, these are the ones we think that are most important? And actually, they've already done one of the best, they've done 2 of the best things. Number 1, it's brick, and number 2, they've got a height limit. So those are 2 of the major things that you want anyway. So then it comes down to what you look at next is what kind of door and window openings do you have in terms of what's most important that's going to shape the character.
Well, I look at that and I think I really would like to be out ahead of this, because I think that us not having this in order, we kind of dropped the ball about collaborating with planning as far as that hotel that was gonna be at 1500 Colorado. Like that hotel, I was violent strongly against that hotel because it is right by the buffer zone and it did not, there was no transition, it didn't do anything. And now thankfully it's just a parking lot and one of the original buildings. But, and that's what kind of prompted some of this because I was like, wow, we didn't do anything that could have helped with that transition because it would have been a very stark transition to not only from the historic district moving to Colorado, but also all the other buildings around it, which are historic. You know, which are late 1800s, early 1900s construction with that same architectural design. So that's kind of why Dylan and I talked about this. And he said, well, how about I bring it to you all? And I like that because I would prefer us to have this in some sort of order so that if something comes to planning, because they don't have to come to us. Buffer zone, if you're doing something in the buffer zone, you don't have to come to HPRC. But it is something that planning can take into account when they're looking at the plans in conjunction with all of the code and the design guide.
And this is something that we could do at the next meeting. And look at both what they already have and what might be done in terms of what is the architectural style or styles that are here.
I like that, and I like the doors and windows too, because if you remember the Club Hotel, that was one of our sticking points with them.
Well, would you be interested if they were interested in coming in just to kind of say, hey, we know we don't need to do it, but we know historic preservation and design and all that is important. Would you be open to having them come in and kind of do like an informal work session like that?
I think
I would.
depending upon their timeline, it'd be better if we as a committee got our ideas sort of set, because they know what they want to do.
Right.
We know the end product, but what that looks like is still kind of murky.
Mhm. Well, then maybe I can just send we only have very conceptual preliminary plans, like they haven't put together a full architectural.
So are they gonna reach a decision point like in July or it's several months off?
I would say several months off. They're just looking, they're like moving forward. They'll be at city council on Monday.
Oh, they
For
will.
work session item.
Okay.
For,
Be a good
So-
time to ask the question then, right?
so because
Oh.
they're, I think they'll be
Poor
applying
folks.
for funding sources through various means. I'm not sure exactly what they're going for. I think it's lights or something, but so they're coming in to kind of present because it's a big project that'll have a big impact on the city. So, if anyone wants to listen in, I think they'll probably present things that I have not yet seen.
If you all have questions that you would like me to ask them, because I can't ask them as a council person in session, please give them to me.
Well, I think just the question of, well, this is a major development, it'd be wonderful to have more housing here, it's right in the center of town, that's just great, it's the entry to town. So important, and will be the entry point to our historic district, which is really important to us, and so how are you taking that into account? How will this enhance everybody's appreciation and understanding of the historic district? How will your design do that? And how are you taking that into account? And what sorts of decisions are you making? It's just that sort of thing that, of course you're going to. You're gonna take this into account and so you understand what, this is important to the town and so on. So that, I think that's the,
I like that.
the
Anyone else?
start.
That's the nice way to keep school building.
Girl, if I could have gotten the front of the school building designated as a city historic site.
Don't they wanna combine their light tech with the historic preservation tax credit? Come on.
Well, there was originally, when it was on the market at first, there was someone who came in and said, we could do it with historic, we will get it designated. And then we will get the historic tax credits and we'll keep the building, but then it didn't work for them, I guess, because they're not under contract, but regardless,
It's
keep part of it.
problematic because there's so much non-historic.
Well, the crazy thing is, if you've been into that building, if you look at the side of the building where the gym is, The brickwork is really beautifully, a beautiful deco design. And then if you go into the gym wall brickwork is beautiful. Like, it's not real flashy. To me, it feels sort of like industrial or very, very low key, but it's really beautifully done. It was very clearly, skilled brickwork. And I'm so sad that that's going away, but we're not the owners, so we don't, we can't.
Right.
To do it.
Well, the last thing I wanted to just ask about that. I don't think we can really do this, but Andy, who's the city administrator, he was asking me, well, given this design standard, and they're in the buffer zone, could we potentially use it as a way to encourage them to design something that's more mixed use with like lower level commercial and upper floor residential, so that our gateway area is not just, a housing project, and I don't really think we can, but I thought it was worth seeing if.
I don't know that we can. I think that might be stretching our oversight.
Of course, if they were planning on making it mixed use, then we could probably say, well, this is what.
That's more of a planning issue than a historic preservation design issue, I think. I mean,
Yeah, because you could make it fit within the district, even if it was just housing.
I would love it though, because I know one of the things that I've heard from people about Four Points thing, in spite of the fact that they hate the design, people were excited that there might be some mixed use in that building that's closest to the rec center. Like daily shopping things that we might need. They like that idea.
Right. Well, and I think there probably are things, I can think of a lot of things that would be nice right on that corner, like some sort of co-op,
Do you know how many units?
60-ish.
wow.
There's going to be some common facilities
Right,
in the building. There may even be daycare.
yeah, daycare would be huge, that's. huge.
There may be laundry, there may be recreation. It all sort of depends upon what their pro forma looks like. But when you get to a larger size housing project, you have to have these sort of support areas anyway, that are kind of like making it mixed use building.
Right. Especially if they were.
60 people, where are they gonna put the parking?
Well, so that's-
Sorry.
It's really cool.
The state's trying to get people not to have
Not
parking
wanna live by
requirements.
the outside of this town.
For affordable, don't they
It's
reduce
so
that
much.
anyways?
Well,
I realize
Affordable
that.
housing.
I mean, you
I mean,
need a
they're-
parking study, like
Yeah, but-
Riverbend was able to reduce their parking, they
Right.
did a parking study that showed that they didn't need much, so they would have to do that.
And don't they assume that affordable, that maybe not everybody has a car? So it's like
Well-
half of a car.
So
for
the other
apartment
thing
or
is
something.
affordable housing in this community is based out of Denver and Adams County. It is not like, if you look at the median income in Idaho Springs, it's like $51,000. If you look at what HUD is saying affordable housing looks like in Idaho Springs, they're using Denver as the baseline for us. And we have talked about on city council, shifting that so that here's how we are willing to work with you as a city, if you actually follow what Idaho Springs affordable housing looks like, because what HUD says, and when people say affordable housing and they're using the HUD tables, I'm like, that's not really affordable housing. Our median income is 51,000. That's not the HUD table. So that is potentially also something that is coming. I don't know if it will. I think it will. I hope it will.
Well, we need to do like a county or local housing needs assessment that kind of speaks directly to it. Because,
Is the county doing that?
well,
I mean, it's in the state mandate.
right, they have to, I mean, we technically could just latch on to the Dr. Cog regional housing needs assessment that they did. Like, we could just opt into that and that would fulfill our requirement, but I really think it's critical that and I think it needs to be the county and all of the municipalities, not just Idaho Springs, or else I'd apply for a grant for it right now to say Idaho Springs will do it, but since we do, there's so much overlap with the county and with Georgetown and Silver Blue and Empire that we really need everyone, so I'm pushing that. There's a grant opportunity open right now for assistance to do those things, and the housing authority that was just created is,
Do they have a director yet?
well, there's a cooling off, they offered it to someone. but
Okay,
there's
good.
like a
Isn't the grant about to close?
the first round closed and now they've opened a new round, but it only goes until sometime in July, so it's kind of.
So it's close. Closing.
Yeah, it only opened on the 9th and it goes for about a month and a half. So I kind of am trying to push to have it sort of happening very soon because that will give us a very localized baseline, but problem is finding, I kind of need everyone to get on board quickly. Otherwise, we just have to get it done by, I think it's December of next year, November of next year. So we have some time, but if there's a lot of housing projects going on in interest, I think we need to kind of do it more quickly.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's off topic, but
Does this give you enough guidance to move forward with this? Do you need more from us?
I think so, and I'm good. I'm gonna put together a better, sort of more probably more accurate boundary, and I'll send that out as soon as I get that done. We'll be back.
The buffer does not accomplish the residential property owners' goals, those who live in the buffer zone of being eligible for tax credits and so on. So I recommend that we consider adding as a work item going forward, going forward, developing additional historic districts here. And that's what you're hearing. This is a good time to respond to that, it seems to me.
Yeah, this is the first time I think I've heard all that much positive about it, because this has been one of my personal soapboxes for, for a long time.
Well, and it's, if you're hearing this sentiment, well, how do we get a tax credit? Well, would you be interested in being included in another historic and expanded residential section historic district in Idaho Springs? Would that make sense to you? And if the answer to that question is yes, that would be a good, it's a good piece of energy to move forward with, because there clearly are eligible areas here that benefit. So, and a lot of the basic groundwork is done. So,
And we're starting to see residents more, like I'm thinking about the residents on West Wall Street. One of the challenges with West Wall Street was that the residents were not all on the same page, and now residents are all on the same page, including some deeding issues that were problematic. So I'm hoping, that's been a long time. I'm hoping that means that people are willing to say, look, we have this small community of houses, we would like to do this.
yeah. Stone wants to roll.
We should give it a push.
Yeah, exactly. Or excavate out below so it starts.
Yes. Okay, anything else on the buffer?
Anything else from me?
Okay. Yeah, you were correct in that. I think this is going to be a very big, what was 4 points? Did 4 points take 2 years?
For what? All of it?
Well, longer than that, but
2022, I think they first started.
they had to also zone the property.
And then they had EPA issues.
Yeah, so this one, if they can do without zoning, that eliminates 6 months of permitting potentially. Will be a highly visible process.
Well, and given the community thought process about what should happen to Carlson, this is not it. So it's gonna get
Right, well,
even more spicy.
Well, and that sort of negativity, one way to turn it into a positive is to say, well, let's see what we can do about preserving residential character and qualities and the historic character of these surrounding neighborhoods here. So that it doesn't go further yet.
Well, nobody wants another gas station. That was a big concern, that there'd be a fourth gas station on that corner.
I only said that to,
Truck
hammer home my
truck.
point.
I wasn't-
Everybody
There's no
has to
truck
have
wash in town, is there?
I was not even gonna name names,
Yeah.
Dylan. because I was at that meeting.
I wanted people to really think about the potential future of that site and that got the ball rolling.
Yes, it did.
I'm
Okay,
thinking about the people that live in that area and I can just hear them.
they were there.
And you got the,
I was at the table with a lot of them.
it's gonna be interesting.
It will be interesting, but that's why we wanted to talk about this now versus when they show up and we're like, oh my God, this thing is awful and what can we do? I don't want us to be caught out like that.
So is this an agenda item for next month?
Um,
Do you think it should be an agenda item? Can you get everything together that you need?
Well, I mean, I only will have, I guess, we can kind of decide after Monday to see how far along they actually are, because if we're only going off of like a conceptual site plan and a couple of like rough elevations, it might be difficult to draw to me.
Well, I think the useful thing would be for us to get our ideas more formalized as to what do we think is important.
Because it's not just this, if you remember last year, the cafe right here. That was a huge discussion as well, with the people that wanted to put the brick house and they wanted a variance for 70 feet. And they were gonna dig down and they were gonna do all these things, like, but that's still historic district right there. So anybody that ends up buying that building can easily scrape it and do something else with it. You know, and we're still gonna have to have what's going on in the historic zone and what happens when someone scrapes and rebuilds.
So making the 2 block buffer an agenda item for next month.
Yes,
And sort of both the boundaries and architectural style, what
Yeah,
that means.
Yeah.
and clarify what architectural styles are important priorities and that should be taken into consideration.
Mhm.
because we're not really gonna get much on the south side. Like south side of the historic district, that's gonna be parking and the mobility hub. But that will also be,
Well, and everyone,
But what the garage looks like.
yeah,
Yes.
the garage is within the 2 block area. And
yes, it is.
as a final reminder, there's meeting next on the 24th, 1 week from today. That's kind of a walk through with the design team to start talking about all that stuff. I think someone from the state will be here,
I'll be
so,
there. I'm gonna be.
so anyone who wants to attend, they told me there would only be minimal walking, but we will be talking about.
And from who at the state or what department?
Well, I think it would just be the state historic preservation.
Oh, he's
Office.
OAHP.
I think so.
Llewellyn,
I don't know who they.
she's the one who's come here before for various things.
Right, well, I know she's like the CLG, her official
Yeah.
title is like CLG coordinator, but I think there's someone from state who like reviews projects that would have impact, like view sheds and things like that in the district.
They also do have a staff architect at OAHP. Or maybe that's Main Street.
Yeah, they don't
As
have
the
an
architect.
architect. It'll be someone probably from does the 106 reviews. What's his name? I see his face.
Anyway, so it should be a nice.
Yeah, that guy.
Walk through. I will be there.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's meeting up
Yeah, it's just
On site there,
basically
by the
just
back end.
two
blocks
blocks that
up.
way.
Yeah.
Just behind Bojo's. Essentially. I'll have one of those big red flags. like
Stop
I
here.
have.
It's a great idea.
Well, can I do have to ask this, and I promise I won't make it long. I can already see the face. Will this also look at the garage and how the garage is going to be impacted with that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of the reason for the meeting also is that Roberts Brothers garage.
Because is my understanding correct that we cannot move the front half? Like initially, we were going to move the front half over to Biden where Verizon was, and
Well,
I think that has changed.
the design to date is that they will not touch it. They're going
Both
to
front
build
and
around
back?
it. They're not going to touch the Roberts Brothers
Ooh,
garage.
wow,
Is
okay.
the plan.
So they're gonna leave it?
The whole thing.
Actually, that's good.
That's the plan at the moment, based on designs I've seen, but, you know, that's part of the topic for next week as well. So, yeah, I think the
So
goal
they're
is to
gonna
leave it.
convert that to a mixed use space?
I don't know, I mean, the Roberts Brothers is owned by the Bojos, the guy who.
Chip.
Who owns Bojos or owned Bojos, that's.
Owns by
Staff owns,
employees.
They
right,
took that
but-
back. They said it was a bad idea. There was a whole new article.
Oh, well, anyway, so
Really?
Chip owns it and I don't know what he's doing historic right now, so I don't
Well,
know.
he and they're living in Hawaii, like,
Right, I think there's some cool opportunities. for the
there may be
down there.
opportunities.
Anyway, I think it could be a cool bike storage, like a bike garage next to the car garage, but anyway.
Personal coming out there. Okay, is there any old business that we need to address? Anything from the commission? All right, I will take a motion to adjourn, 7:46 PM.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Raise your right hand. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned, 7:46. Thank you.